Hello all, welcome to the show. I'm Gus Gagliardi and this is Fire Code Tech. On Fire Code Tech, we interview fire protection professionals from all different careers and backgrounds in order to provide insight and a resource for those in the field. My goal is to help you become a more informed fire protection professional. Fire Code Tech has interviews with engineers and researchers, fire marshals, and insurance professionals, and highlights topics like codes and standards, engineering systems, professional development, and trending topics in the industry. So if you're someone who wants to know more about fire protection or the fascinating stories of those who are in the field, you're in the right place. Hello all, welcome to episode 40 of Fire Code Tech. On this episode, we have Stephen Lewis. Stephen is a fire alarm professional who's been in the industry over 30 years. In this episode, we talk about some of Stephen's fascinating work in the field of technical design and sales. We get into some of his big success stories, and later on in the interview, we talk about some of his great work in the area of volunteering on NFPA Technical committees, most notably the NFPA 72 Committee for Notification Appliances and the new NFPA technical document that's coming out, which is NFPA 420, the standard for cannabis-related facilities. Tune in if you want to find out some great takeaways from Stephen's career, as well as some really interesting information on the variety of facilities and systems that Stephen has been a part of designing, including some exposition about gas detection systems. Do us a big favor and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And also, if you wouldn't mind, give us a rate and review on Apple Podcasts. That would be a big help. Also, if you listen on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe. All right, let's dive into the episode. Stephen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm happy to have you.
Thank you very much, Gus. I tell you, it was such a surprise and pleasure to hear from you. It's nice to get recognized and people appreciate what you do. And so, yeah, that was a pleasant surprise. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, yeah, it's always a gamble reaching out to people, so it's a good thing. I'm glad you're interested in coming on.
Yeah, and I will tell you too, Gus, that the second reason for me not only was a surprise, and I appreciate all that, but it's wanting to give back to the fire industry and hoping I can get some listeners that might find this fire industry and make career changes. I just saw some interesting stats that just number of people in this industry are retiring, and we're just looking for new people to kind of take the torch.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like that has been a emphasis recently in the field is this kind of how do we get the next generation informed that this is an option, and not just an option, but a wonderful career path and with a lot of promise. So I agree with what you're saying. Any way that we can get the word out and let people know about what a great career fire and life safety can be is it's a good deal. So I'm glad that you feel that way as well.
Nice.
Yeah. So I like to get these podcasts kind of started and get people acclimated with you, Stephen, and just talk about a little bit about your origin story and kind of how you found the field as a transition from our topic of how others could find their way to this field.
Yeah, no, great question. I'll tell you, back in the day, all I simply did was answer a newspaper ad back in the early '90s for a company named Simplex, and they were really looking outside of the company for people with sales experience that wanted to explore the fire life safety industry, and it sounded exciting. It sounded rewarding, and it just sounded like something that might sound cliche, but where I could make a difference, And so I responded to the ad, and interviewed with them and was hired, not knowing a single and I think that's the important thing, not knowing a single thing about this industry, but understanding the importance and the need for the services that you can bring to the table. And I was willing to invest in my time into the company, into the industry to learn about it because I just had a gut feeling about it, not really knowing anything about it. And I think that would be good for your listeners because it doesn't, coming into this, it's just really having the right aptitude and enthusiasm to take on a challenge and learn something new. And that was it for me. And it was just the best career choice ever.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that I frequently talk about that you don't have to have all the answers or any of the answers starting out. Just to have a good, like you said, attitude and ambition to learn is the recipe for success. But yeah, I like hearing about that. That's interesting. That's the first time I've ever heard anyone say that they got their start in fire and life safety from a newspaper ad. But I've heard a variety of stories from family members to, just people, mutual contacts. And so I like hearing about that. It's always interesting. I find how people kind of stumbled their way in. It seems like that's a common theme for people in fire and life safety.
Yeah, and another thing I realized too, really knowing nothing about the industry, but uh, I felt in my heart that this is a product, this is a service that all buildings, all communities, all people, rely on. Might not really think about it initially in a building, but these type of things that are provided through fire life safety really, in one sense, might be thought of as a commodity, like breathing air, but it's essential for buildings. And I knew this was something that would have no reflection on what the economy is doing at the time, or what the markets are doing, or whatever. I just felt it was just the right move for me, and I really lucked out on that. I really had nothing to go on, just what I felt the industry would bring, and yeah, turned out well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel similarly. I kind of stumbled my way into the field as well, and just had heard that it had good stability and, like you were saying, reliable work, and so that was honestly the biggest thing that drew me to the field. Um, so I resonate with that statement. But
And
yeah.
the other thing too, Gus, I tell you, I always remember this from a conference about 6 or 7 years ago. I was at an AFAA conference, and the chairman at that time said, "You know what? This is we're not mowing lawns here. This is a higher calling to a certain degree. I mean, you're entrusted with buildings and people and property, and I really feel the same way. I was always looking for something where I felt in my heart it would be kind of a higher calling. My mom probably wish I was a doctor or a lawyer, those kind of typical things, but I really feel like it's a higher calling to a certain degree because I feel like I am making a difference in these buildings.
Yeah, there is that definitely greater impetus on people in the field, and the feeling that these are you know systems that protect property and lives, and and it's not just if you phone it in at your job, you're not just it has implications. So, and if you can find a job that's meaningful or a career that's meaningful and also has some impact on society and the greater good, I think that it makes you feel even better at the end of the day. And so, yeah, I definitely feel that. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, for context, what kind of different projects and different kind of work did you get involved with at your first role in sales and just a different fire alarm equipment, Stephen?
So, Gus, there are a couple of projects that I like to talk about that had a huge impact on my career. Uh, Back in the days when I was with Simplex back in Kentucky, uh, there were two major accounts that really just launched my career and kept me in this industry, and I feel your listeners would learn from and maybe help them in career decisions. Being from Kentucky, the home of Kentucky Fried Chicken, the parent brand is called Yum Brands, and they own the KFC, Taco Bell's, Pizza Huts, all that, and based in Louisville, of course. And I got involved with their co-ops that the co-ops provide catalogs, if you will, of all the things you would need in any of the 10,000, 20,000 restaurants that they serve around the world, whether it's ice, chicken, or anything dealing with the stores. And I was able to get in their catalogs the fire alarm package that would be needed for any of these restaurants, and pretty much they were what I would call duct detector, HVAC systems. We provided duct detectors for three or four, depending upon the prototype of the store. Put together these packages. I got them put into these catalogs, and then it was just a matter of the franchisees or the corporate stores. They would see these in the catalog, and we would then receive orders for these from our office in Kentucky, and I ran a national account for them out of the Louisville branch for Simplex at the time. And we were probably shipping out 10 to 15 stores a week all over the country. And what I found really interesting, that it was eye-opening for me to learn. That's when I first discovered how different jurisdictions around the country worked, where I found that Florida and Texas and California and Connecticut and some of the other states, what the codes were and what was involved in putting in these life safety systems in the restaurants. So it was really rewarding for me. We would ship these out of our office. We would put together the plans and get these out for all these restaurants, and that was a real rewarding thing. I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would be involved with the KFCs and the Pizza Huts and the Taco Bells back in the day, but that was extremely rewarding. We're still in their catalogs, so franchisees, they don't have to go around and shop around for these products. Just pick them out of the catalog. So I was really blessed with that account. The other one that was even more rewarding, which was another national account, I was able to get in a chain of movie theaters at the time, National Amusements Showcase Cinemas, based out of Massachusetts. And what was able to kind of seal the deal for me was, at the time, the engineer happened to be based just across the river from Kentucky, and we had a relationship, and he was involved with this chain of movie theaters. And what I was able to do that no one else seemed to be able to bring to the table was take the smoke detectors that were put in the theaters, and it was in the neighborhood of 200, 300 smoke detectors per theater chain. Uh, and we would electrostatic these smoke detectors black in order to match the ceiling. And this was really a challenge. I had to think out of the box. At the time, people were, with their fridges that might be an almond or a green color in their homes. They were, the trend back then was to electrostatic paint the doors of these fridges in order to be, updated color, if you will. And I found a guy in Louisville that electrostatic painted the smoke detectors for me. I would get these shipped into our office. I would take them apart and take them over to this gentleman, and it would take him a couple of weeks, but he would electrostatic these smoke detectors to a matte black color. And what was interesting, if you were able, if you wanted to do this from a manufacturer, to dye supplement smoke detectors is very expensive, to get those in another color, and it was prohibitive to do that at the time at for any particular theater. So I came up with many samples of these and took them over, and the National Amusements review those, and the engineer. And at the end of the day, uh, they came out great. The contractors weren't able to scratch paint off when you would mount these, and I had to get a letter from that I put together that would actually it voided the UL listing on them because you cannot paint smoke detectors. But I explained to the customer that while we did void the UL listing, these would be tested to all NFPA 72 standards, and we would ensure that they work properly. Um, but had them sign a letter, explained that they understood that this was a voided UL listed detector, but it worked, perfect. We just didn't have that, and that ended up sealing the deal for me in order to get this account. So we probably did 20, 30 movie theater chains in the next 2 or 3 years, and engineered those and put those together out of our office in Louisville. And I had a second national account that we serviced uh, throughout the Midwest and East, and it was really exciting. I mean, I just my wildest dreams. I just couldn't believe that we were able to do this kind of work, and the customer was happy, and did a lot of traveling with these theaters and such. But to me, those are two of the most significant jobs that impacted my career and kept me interested and kept me involved in doing what I'm doing, because I knew that it's something that you just at times need to think outside of the box, and provide the solution, and and it worked out. And I don't know, it just really impacted me and energized me. And I think people wanting to get into this business just realize that there's so many opportunities in so many different ways, and it's so rewarding. I keep the black smoke detector. I have a couple extra. I keep one on my desk just as a reminder that you just need to think outside of the box at times, and work with your customer, and you can get things done. So yeah, so I just wanted to share those with you.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that there are times where you just have to problem solve. That's something that is paramount in our business. And yeah, so that's really neat stories about some big successes that you've had in your career, getting creative. I think that's probably something that's across the board. You got to be somebody who problem solves and gets the job done. So that's interesting. Do you feel like you've had a specialty in one type of occupancy more than others? I like what you're saying about, the variety is such a nice um, change of pace for work and different, every day is kind of different. Every project's kind of different, even if it's the same type of system. But yeah, do you have any specialty, would you say? With any in regards to any occupancy?
I would say high-rise buildings. I really enjoy, uh, I would say in the high-rise buildings, just the amount of people that potentially can go in these large 20, 30-story buildings and be able to provide uh, protection where you can evacuate people safely from the top of the building down to the bottom and understand. And I think I got the best perspective on that from just seeing what occurred during 9/11 and how we rely on the fire command center, on the equipment, and being able to I spent a lot of time with fire departments, helping them understand what these fire alarm panels can do, and when you go into a high-rise building, and the things you look for, and how to acknowledge and reset alarms and such. But the codes are very specific, very very strong in regards to high-rise buildings. When we get into intelligibility, area of refuge, proper way to do elevator control, how you manage a smoke management or smoke control system, how are you venting things out, um, what's involved with a 2 hour rated corridor. There's so many things involved with high rise buildings. And yeah, I really enjoy those because it just takes a little more work, and I have the ability to, when I'm designing these buildings, to kind of look at these buildings kind of like in a 3D perspective, where I can, from the plans, I can look at these and really see how someone, if myself was on the 50th floor, in a corner office, what would I do if the fire alarm system went off? What type of messages and what are the things you need to do to be able to evacuate safely. So yeah,
Yeah.
high-rise buildings for me um, give me probably the most satisfaction because I know how complicated they can be, and what's involved in something as simple as just trying to evacuate, and it's no easy thing.
Yeah. Definitely. I've been had the first couple high-rise designs of my career fairly recently, and yeah, it's extremely complicated. You know, as it relates to fire alarm systems, knowing all of the different components that you need to provide specifically for high-rise buildings, you know um, so just like trying to understand all the requirements of a fire command room and stairwell pressurization systems and smoke control systems that are more common in high rise buildings. So there's definitely a greater level of complexity and a higher level of just detail required to, shafts that need combination fire smoke dampers. There's so many different fire alarm components in high rise buildings. It's one of those high complexity, high hazard occupancies where fire protection really gets more of a seat at the table. So um, I like hearing about that.
Yeah, I like to get involved early on in these risk analysis and get all the players to the table, and you know if need be, have meetings with those fire departments on the front end to understand, what the intent is. One of the questions I ask a lot of my clients is, if there was a fire in your high rise building, where you tell me where do you want to be, in the newspaper? Do you want to be on page one, or you want to be back on page 10 where we were able to take care of that? Tell me what your thoughts are. I mean, minimum code or the things we need to do that might save the 10 or 15 extra seconds to evacuate people. I tell you, that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to serve on NFPA 72 Chapter 18 and Annex A, because that chapter deals with notification appliances for for fire alarm systems in buildings. And for me, again, that's the important aspect is what is the protocol and the things that we need to do in order to evacuate people. Should the fire alarm system say where I am in San Francisco, um, we have a section of the city. We have a lot of uh, Chinese businesses and high-rise buildings that predominantly, probably 80-90% are Chinese. Should those evacuation messages be, in Chinese for those buildings? And in some cases, they are. So there's a lot of things to consider. I really enjoy that. I've gotten a lot of satisfaction out of that, and really, when you get into these notification appliances, it just gets really complex in designing these and and location of devices and the things. There's so much going on now with the development in this chapter. Um, LED devices, indirect devices. I see all types of devices out there, and these high profile speakers that are now. I mean, these are quality speakers that you could put in Carnegie Hall. It's where intelligibility, it's not so much just making the noise, but people being able to understand the noise, understand the messages. In a lot of jurisdictions around the country, I find that they prefer that these messages be from a female voice versus a male voice because it's more soothing. So there's so many things that go into this because we never want to be in that situation. You know,
Yeah, yeah, that's very interesting about having thinking about it as a more complex problem than just meeting the minimum requirements of code, really trying to provide not just a fire and life safety system, but a holistic view of the building and an assessment of how is this building going to be used. I think that's a look at the greater picture of fire protection and life safety that sometimes we lose sight of in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry. So that's
and
fascinating.
that brings up a good point, Gus, because nowadays I'm seeing it, especially in a lot of the high tech buildings and all the buildings where we have so many different names for rooms within a building, whether it's a cell room, a lactation room, a quiet room. I just, I could go on and on with the examples of these type rooms and what type of coverage do you provide in that? If you have an office that has two desks versus one desk, and what the different fire departments require for that, and and so yeah, it's every day these buildings are evolving and growing, and the technology and the things that we're doing is really challenging at times.
Yeah, that's always such a very, I feel like, kind of nebulous, or like just a point of the in the code where it's at the designer or engineer's discretion of the application of that notification device. Um, you know, I've seen like if you're looking at Department of Defense jobs, it's a little bit more clear. Counting the chairs in the room if there's over I forget what it is, 3 or 4 chairs on the furniture plan, then you're putting a device in that room. So you kind of have that as some sort of a guideline. But as a young professional, I found that as something that was very hard to understand. As a code nerd, sometimes I just would rather it was more prescriptive. But as you get more years of experience, you can kind of understand where that line is for, um, you know, those appliances.
Yeah, I was at an NFPA conference several years ago, and you talk about prescriptive, but I see more and more countries doing performance based. I heard a engineer from New Zealand talk about how they really use the performance base, and that's really worked for them very well. So, you see that too, where people, what methods are they choosing, the prescriptive or performance based or those kind of things. Other things that I'm seeing too. I tell you, just when you just talk about an office with, with two desks in it, let's say that they have a window in that office looking out. Well, depending on whether they put a shade or a bookcase or something in there, things can change just based upon the windows in an office, and you know how things can change over time, and will that window be blocked with a blind that you can't see out of, or different things. So you really have to kind of dive into it and sort things out. You just there's just too much at stake.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So, Stephen, you talked a little bit about your involvement in professional societies. I saw on your LinkedIn that you've had a long-standing relationship with NICET. Yeah, I'd love to hear about how you stayed involved with NICET and kind of some of the different roles that you've held, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so I have to say, early on in my career, Simplex was really wanting and encouraging, their employees to get involved with NICET, and I chose early on to take this on in my career and learn about NICET. I tell you, it's if you're not an FPE or an electrical engineer, these certifications and the different programs out there, you just want people to know that you're engaged, and that you're spending time to learn about this industry. NICET, I feel, for me, has been the best learning out there. When I got involved with NICET, it took me probably a good 6 or 7 years to get to a level 3, and then testing for level 4 was challenging. It took me several times, and it took me to get the level 4, reaching out to the board of directors of NICET to explain to them that one of the test questions really had a couple of answers versus the one answer they thought, and they reversed the decision and gave me NICET level 4, um, which was amazing. And from that, I offered my services to NICET. They're up in Virginia, to be a subject matter expert, and help them develop test questions for level 4 and level 3. So I've gone up to Virginia one time, and I've typically every other year, I get involved in workshops and writing questions to keep things fresh and relevant in the market. Back in the day, everything was the paper test, and I remember going in there with seemed like 20, 30 pounds of books to prepare for this. But going through the evolution of that, and getting involved with the test writing workshops, and then they presented me an opportunity to be an ambassador for NICET, because quite honestly, the marketing in general, they don't have a lot of resources, a lot of money available to to get that out there to the community. And so, being an ambassador, what I do is I go there and work with fire departments, the A&E community, and really contractors or anyone involved in the fire life safety industry, and try to tell them, this is something that you should go after. You should get your certifications. This in my mind, like I said earlier, is a higher calling. So I think that the ambassador program that I've been involved with for over 10 years has given me a lot of satisfaction, knowing that I'm getting people new in the industry involved, and getting them the firearm level 1 and level 2, and encourage them to stay with it, and also I have my level one, level two, and in the test and inspect with NICET. So, it's for me to maintain these systems and maintain them properly and exercise the systems. There's a lot of importance in that certification as well to know how to test and inspect systems correctly and the right things to do. And so NICET is invaluable. I see these guys at all the conferences, and I just encourage everyone to get involved with NICET. It's been the most rewarding thing for me.
Yeah, that's great. I love hearing about people getting involved and encouraging professionals to become certified, and that way they can be have a greater level of knowledge about the industry and the systems that they are providing, and also having a way to advance themselves in their career. And networking, the networking in organizations like this are great and invaluable for your career. So those are all great points, Stephen. I like hearing about that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I really encourage everyone. I mean, NICET is just, in so many companies now, I encourage all companies that, if your employees take this on and do this on their own time and want to improve themselves, then they should get a salary bump. You're doing it for yourselves, but you're doing it for your company and protecting your company's liability, and in a sense, you should be rewarded. But NICET does a really good job. I tell you, I work very closely with them and involved with them in developing other courses and other things. But yeah, that's a big one for me. NICET is very close to me.
so moving on to a little bit about where you're working now, Stephen, and I what kind of projects and work that you're in now, for context about kind of this stage of your career.
Yeah, from Louisville, moved out to the Bay Area, and I found a company that is a regional family-owned company based in San Jose, with offices in Seattle, Sacramento, Reno, and again, it's a low voltage integrator. Probably 70% in the security business, but RFI does, boy, they do a fair amount in the fire life safety industry. I tell you, it's, working for a company like RFI is giving they've, I tell you, more than anything, they've been so supportive of all the things I'm involved in, whether it's NFPA or NICET or my CFPS certification, or getting involved with AFAA or SFPE. They've been so supportive, and that's made a huge difference because the company, RFI has invested a lot of money and resources in supporting me to go to these conferences and be involved with these organizations. What not only has it given them visibility, but for me, the networking and being out there, just you have to stay relevant and you have to stay visible. For me, I will say that out here, that these projects I'm involved in, it's so many high tech companies where the needs are a little more. I feel a little more pressure, a lot more going on. I'm involved with several you know, very large companies that, where we're monitoring, where they're making, these clean labs, these clean rooms, where they're making chips and wafers and all the things involved with machinery needed to process uh, these things, and where we're monitoring, you know, two, three, 4,000 gas points in these systems.
Wow.
And these type of high tech companies, this one in particular, if the building was to dump or we had to evacuate the building, I'm told they would lose over $1 million per hour in production. Um,
Wow.
and it's just, yeah, when you're monitoring, you know, 10, 15, 20 types of gases coming into a facility through, what I call these gas monitoring panels on top of the fire alarm panels. It's been really interesting for me. I've learned a lot about these industries, and it's just overwhelming, the stuff that you do on top of providing the early warning, aspirating systems. I enjoy working with the high tech companies a lot. I enjoy working with the many school districts I'm involved in and colleges out here. Um, it's just the economy's been pretty good out here. We've been blessed. The product that we primarily lead with is Siemens, and we get great support, great resources. A lot of white papers, a lot of seminars, a lot of different things. Right now we're involved in these energy storage facilities, which are up and coming now.
Yes.
Doing a number of those in different types of technology used for detection in those type of facilities with flame detectors and different types of things. So it's been, it's just been really interesting. I tell you, I just learned so much from these different facilities that we're in.
Yeah, I'd like to pick your brain more. You talked about some really complex and interesting topics. I haven't had too many opportunities in my career to work on gas detection systems because of they're just, well, at least in the occupancies that I've dealt with in my career, they're not as common. And they're very complex and sensitive. And, these sensors, um, you know, they, like all sensors, they can go bad. So it's hard to design these systems for thousands of points. That's pretty remarkable. And then another issue I'd love to hear more from you about is I just sat through a great presentation last week about lithium ion batteries and their failure methods and the fire safety around sensing the off gassing um, electrolytic chemicals within the batteries and how that can be a precursor to like a flaming fire. But maybe that's too in the weeds. But if you have any thoughts on either of those subjects, I think they're very fascinating.
Yeah, those facilities, the lithium ion facilities and storage facilities, it's a lot of physics and understanding these gases and the vapors and how they come off. Siemens had just developed a new detection for these types of gases and fumes and that can spark in these storage facilities. So I'm just learning that myself. I tell you, the other thing out here too, being out here in Northern California and the Central Valley area is, the agriculture. I was just elected to serve on a new standard, which is fire protection of cannabis growing and processing facilities. And while it is focused on cannabis, it could be really any type of grow processing facility where you don't see a lot of codes. Out here there's all types of ag facilities, but the one that I felt that I could have an impact that I've just heard horror stories from fire departments and different jurisdictions. When I saw a presentation about 4 or 5 years ago at an NFPA conference, and how these type of facilities are showing up in communities and really the fire departments aren't really sure, not really knowing what is the right thing to do to protect your community. What are the things you need to put in here? How, what do you need to do to, you know, to to make these places safe? And you can imagine these cannabis facilities are going up all over the country. They project in 5 years that this cannabis industry will be a 20 25 billion dollar legitimate business. And it's just it's really about time for the codes to develop in this area and provide guidance, really, not only to for these facilities to be built safely, but how to maintain them. How do you continue to make sure that these places are safe 5 years down the road? And so I'm just starting to learn a lot about this industry. Some of the things that came to my mind, was just the amount of HVAC equipment or the electrical power that's required in these facilities, or the types of machines that are involved that have no listings for these things. Fire exits. I've seen video. I've seen a number of photos when you go in these facilities, and there are no fire exits. And really the type of gases that come out of these, the type of solvents that are involved in these, it's just something that certainly here that needs to be addressed, and we have to be responsible. We have to be responsible in protecting these things, and start doing it right to save lives, not only for the people working in there, but for the communities and the fire departments trying to enforce these things and trying to understand what are the things that need to be done. So that's been a big thing for me out here lately, after being involved in a number of these seminars.
Wow. Yeah, that's very interesting to hear about. It's been a topic that has been getting a lot of discussion in Oklahoma has passed legislation where these facilities have become more common. So I think that's really neat that you are going to be on the forefront of people in the fire and life safety community who are trying to evaluate the best way to protect these kind of occupancies. In my estimation, hazardous materials in general is extremely difficult area of the building code and systems design, and there is a lot of instances in which I think the whole community misses the mark on protecting these kind of hazards. So I think that's awesome that you're getting a real insider look at how we're going to respond to this burgeoning industry. I don't think it's going anywhere. Definitely not for you, but I would say likely the whole nation. So yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah, and what I like what NFPA does is they make the committees. I think there's 16, maybe 20 members on this committee, but they make it balanced. So there's a small percentage of people that are involved in with integrators, people that are actually out there, installing these systems, maintaining these systems, making sure they're installed correctly. So I'm that I would say is my special interest group. Just but I've noticed on there that they have a balance of fire officials from over the country. A&E community is represented. I find I found that on there it was an interesting mix, because and they have this on the NFPA site. There was a gentleman with the butane industry and the people providing these type of chemicals involved in extracting the cannabis and such. So it's well represented. It's well balanced. Really looking forward to providing my input and helping make these facilities secure and safe.
Yeah.
And I've also found too, it's interesting. I've these facilities, you don't even know in most cases that these are even in your communities. They're not something that you have a billboard or a
Right.
sign on, and to me that's a little disturbing.
Uh-huh.
Where I have seen some of these located. Matter of fact, one of these was relatively close to one of our offices. So yeah, I'm looking forward to helping develop this standard.
Yeah, I think I don't know if you heard about that that tragedy that was in the LA with one of these processing facilities that ended up I believe, taking some firefighters' lives. But I think that we need to have a focus on these facilities so that we can prevent events like that. And the fact that they might have been in a business building or not in a facility designed for this sort of thing. Interesting enough, I was driving on the highway with a group of coworkers to a job site visit, and they were saying, well, you can probably surmise that that's a grow facility because look at the huge HVAC units for this warehouse building that's out in the middle, kind of nowhere off the side of the highway. And we're like, well, yeah, that makes sense, that large HVAC capacity that you were talking about.
Right, right. And where I've seen inside for just things that I would never think of lighting, where I've seen pictures where they're running extension cords throughout the facility for lighting and different things that require power on top of the HVAC. Yeah, it's it's just kind of the wild west, right now. You can find a little bit in NFPA one under the in the fire code there, but yeah, not enough. So this is well needed. So
Yeah, without a doubt. So, yeah, I'd love to talk more about, we spoke a little bit about your involvement with NFPA 72 and, your focus in NFPA 72 and your work on that technical committee. But yeah, I have people, and I've felt this way at times. The NFPA 72 is so diverse and such a document that brings together a litany of different systems and components. Uh, yeah, I'd like to hear more about your work on NFPA 72 because I think that people can be confused by the document at times, and it's got a bit of a learning curve, which maybe that's coming from me coming from a fire suppression background. My first job out of college was fire suppression, so I got NFPA 13 drilled in my head, but NFPA 72 was a little bit more difficult.
yeah, I mean, with NFPA, what lately I've noticed in the evolution of the codes that come out every 3 years is they're been slowly getting away from using the word fire alarm. Even though it is primarily a fire alarm code, it's more about emergency communication systems. Bringing in the voice, area of refuge, all the other system components, and of course, fire alarm is the major component of that. But it's just evolving. Especially with the technology where we can network these systems through the infrastructure of the buildings with Ethernet and all the different ways that we connect these buildings and wireless systems. It's anymore. Gosh, the firearm code and serving on chapter 18. I've learned so much about all the different components. From the proper ways to test systems. I mean, it covers the gamut. It's not, NFPA doesn't tell you the type of occupancies to put in the building, but it tells you, once that is determined, where you need to put things, you know, in the building. And it's, yeah, I remember the day when 72 was broken up in a number of publications, number of code standard books. But they're trying to make it more user friendly, where people can, that need to use this code can find things easier, and they're trying to make it a little more updated with taking out more negative type context in there where you don't need it to say where you do need to provide a pull station or a smoke detector, and the development of performance based versus prescriptive, and the different things. It really is a good resource. I tell you, I refer back to it, all the time during the course of a week. Um, there's always something I can learn, but it really is the best standard we have out there on top of the IBC or the IFC or the Life Safety Code. It really is the foundation for the Fire Life Safety Code. You can look at so many other documents out there, elevator code, but things seem to reference back to 72 in one sense, and I get more of a clear direction in a lot of ways, starting with that and adding other things where I need to.
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. So I like to kind of wrap up interviews and the conclusion of these discussions with some just broader questions about the industry. I think we talked about a lot of good trending topics and things on the horizon for fire and life safety, but I always like to ask when I get knowledgeable professionals on the show what kind of advice you would have for uh, any sort of professional in the industry, somebody just getting into the industry or somebody who wants to um, gain an edge. What would you have to say to somebody like that?
I would say to them, post COVID, that understanding that, but there's a lot of, when you look at the complete kind of food chain of what it takes to put these systems in and maintain them. You have to understand that fire departments in general, everyone's cutting resources, and they're bringing in a lot of third-party consultants to design these systems. They're bringing in third-party inspectors and different consultants to inspect these and maintain these. But I'm finding lately that remote video testing is going to be a big thing, right? Where these fire departments we can get on a Zoom call, and we can take them around and show them that we've tested, whether it's 10% or 100% of the system, and do things remotely. We can provide, there's software applications out there now that, the reports are sent through what's called the compliance engine and to these fire departments, because they don't have the resources, and letters then become generated automatically if you have a deficiency, and how you correct these. And you know I tell you, things changed quite a bit several years ago when there was the huge tragedy in Oakland with the Ghost Fire, and where building officials aren't always able to get out to the buildings and check up on these buildings. And what I find in this industry, the only change comes through tragedy. When insurance companies and FM Global and all these organizations, I find the biggest change, unfortunately, comes from tragedy and learning from these things. But I see post COVID where we're looking for just better, smarter ways to be able to maintain these buildings and exercise these buildings. Um, without the resources that we had years ago. Um, and I find now that these buildings are, we're just looking for ways to do these in a better way for you know I will say green buildings and different ways to do this where we can do this in a way that is best for the world. LED technology, and just the ways that things are with the resources that we use in the buildings. The technology, and you're probably aware of this, Gus, has changed in the buildings with the fires nowadays. These fires, with the materials we're using, the combustible materials. To me, that is the biggest thing going on. These buildings go up. That UL put out a video showing the materials that we had in buildings 10 years ago versus today, and what's involved in building these buildings and the materials used in the buildings, and in the example that I saw in the video, these newer buildings will go up probably 45% quicker than buildings that from even 10, 15 years ago. So it's just amazing the technology anymore. I'm seeing where buildings are being constructed out here where they're bringing in floors at a time, and it's like Legos, right? And, just more economical, faster, better ways to construct these buildings. I've seen that in numerous cases where they've been able to build a 4-story dorm building in the course of the summer. you
Wow.
know, with trucks bringing in floors of a building and sections of a building and constructing them like Legos. So yeah, it's fascinating, and we're doing fire alarm design from the factories, versus at the actual place where the building's going to be to be constructed. So to me, there's just it's exciting. I tell you, it's I've never been busier in my life through these COVID times. It's an essential service, and it's something that especially think about this, guys, when these buildings were shut down, and then all of a sudden buildings start to open up. These buildings haven't really been used in the course of a year, and then you need to inspect and test these buildings in order to bring employees back and the fire departments to feel safe to go back into these buildings and such. So it's from this COVID, I see a lot of changes in this industry where we can do more things remote, and we can do things that just make these buildings better.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great points there. I've seen that big push for remote inspection and some testing as well. And yeah, I've been extremely busy during COVID times. I felt so bad for people who weren't able to be employed or have the job opportunities that they wanted because of COVID. Because I feel like fire and life safety has had a big push for the industry to stay on top of things, or it's just kind of been charging forward. And yeah, adapting to new technologies, adapting to the future in fire and life safety and what that entails, and trying to stay on top of it all is it's very intriguing. But
Yeah,
yeah, I agree with you 100%, Stephen.
yeah.
But
So
anyways, well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Stephen. If people want to find you and reach out, or if there's anything that you would like to plug, please feel free.
yeah, I mean, I am available through my LinkedIn site for information. For anything, they just find me under Stephen Lewis. out in the Bay Area with RFI. But certainly, I like to engage in any type of discussion that involves the fire and life safety industry. So I'm available to, I'm always excited just to talk to people in this industry to get them involved, mentor to young people and just bring my experience, my 30 years of experience out here in the field where I've seen virtually every type of building. I would love to, share that with people.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, thank you again so much, Stephen. And yeah, I appreciate it. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Gus, for reaching out. You're doing a great thing for this fire life safety industry, and look forward to, really have enjoyed listening to your podcast, and there's several more that I'm going to listen to. But yeah, the key is I think we all want to make a difference in our own way, and you're doing a great service out there, and thank you.
Without a doubt, I appreciate that. That means a lot. Awesome. Thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure to share the episode with a friend if you enjoyed it. Don't forget that fire protection and life safety is serious business. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are by no means a professional consultation or a codes and standards interpretation. Be sure to contact a licensed professional if you are getting involved with fire protection and or life safety. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.